Welcome to the deep dive, where we take your source material and distill it into, well, pure focused knowledge.
Hmm.
Today, we're plunging into the surprising world of miniature, glass-enclosed ecosystems. It's a realm where the terminology can get really loose.
Oh, yeah. Immensely confusing for newcomers.
Exactly. So our mission today, guided by the sources you sent in, is to extract the essential knowledge to finally and clearly distinguish between three very specific types: the terrarium, the aquascape, and the paludarium.
And what's so great here is the source itself. I mean, we're looking at Notes on Gardening, part 761.
761.
I know, right? It comes from a blog by an author who, and I love this, describes himself as an old software plumber.
Ha! I love that.
It's just a perfect example of how deep curiosity, when you apply that sort of, technical discipline to it, can lead to incredible knowledge, even in these super niche areas.
And the whole reason he started this was what he saw a photo and just wasn't sure what he was looking at. A terrarium or an aquascape.
That was it, that little moment of confusion.
And that really highlights the stumbling block for anyone new to a hobby, right?
Yeah.
The systems can look similar, but the rules behind them are just completely different.
Absolutely. You have to know what kind of environment you're actually building.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's get these definitions absolutely nailed down, starting with the two non-negotiable extremes.
Sounds good.
Sure.
I think the best way to start is with a really simple binary. It all comes down to the water.
Dry versus wet.
Exactly. The dry commitment versus the wet commitment.
Okay, let's start on the dry side then. The world of air and soil. Based on the author's research, what's the absolute non-negotiable definition of a terrarium?
The source is very precise on this. A terrarium is defined by its land-based focus. It's a dry or humid enclosure.
Humid is okay.
Humid is totally okay, but the crucial defining part is that it exists without standing water.
Ah.
If you see an intentional pool, even a tiny one, you've already moved past the definition.
Okay, that no standing water rule is the boundary line. But what about condensation? I mean, if you build a closed terrarium for high humidity, you're going to get water running down the glass. It'll pool a little bit.
That's a great question because it forces us to define standing. So, condensation, high moisture in the substrate, that's all part of the necessary internal water cycle. That's the system maintaining itself.
Right.
When we say standing water, we mean an intentional engineered body of water, something non-draining, maybe deep enough to support aquatic life or need a filter.
So the goal of the terrarium is purely terrestrial life.
Purely terrestrial. It's supporting things like moss, ferns, small tropical plants, all in a soil layer that's built for drainage, even if it's moist.
Got it. The focus is all on the roots, the soil, the air. So now let's pivot to the complete opposite, the other side of that binary, the aquascape. This is where the commitment to water chemistry and just total submersion is absolute.
It really is.
Yeah.
The aquascape is essentially the underwater equivalent, but with a total dedication to the medium. The source defines it simply as a glass tank that is entirely filled with water.
The whole thing.
The whole thing. Water isn't just an accessory, it is the environment.
So all the challenges just flip.
Yeah.
A terrarium is about managing humidity and soil aeration. An aquascape then has to be about what? pH, temperature.
Exactly. pH, temperature stability, dissolved oxygen, all of that. The components shift from soil to specialized, nutrient-rich substrates designed to work underwater.
And the plants are totally different, obviously.
Oh, completely. They're selected specifically because they can thrive while fully submerged.
Right.
It's a highly aesthetic art form, really. You're creating this beautiful underwater landscape.
With the rocks and the driftwood, yeah.
Right, the hardscape. But the biological commitment is non-negotiable. Everything inside plant or animal is aquatic.
Okay, so to summarize that for you, the foundational contrast is this. Terrarium land and soil-focused, no standing water, it's all about terrestrial conditions. Aquascape water-focused, fully submerged, all about aquatic life and chemistry.
Two completely distinct, separate biomes.
And with those two clear definitions, we can now tackle the gray area, the part that started the author's whole research project.
This is where it gets really interesting.
It does. The author found out, just like a lot of us do, that some of the most striking setups just don't fit into either of those boxes. They actively combine both.
And that combination brings us to the paludarium.
Paludarium.
The name comes from palus, the Latin word for swamp or marsh. And this is the definition that solved everything for the author.
So how do we define it? Is it just any tank with a bit of land sticking out of the water? That seems a little vague.
It's much more precise than that, actually. This is where the engineering really ramps up. A paludarium is a unique ecosystem that's specifically designed to have both land and water areas. And they're distinct, but also interconnected. But the key feature, the thing that really makes it a paludarium, is the presence of a shoreline.
The shoreline, the explicit transition zone.
Yes.
So if you see a bank or a little beach or a cliff face inside the glass, that's the tell.
That is the tell. You're looking at a paludarium. You're looking at a man-made riparian environment, essentially, where water meets land.
And because you have both, the engineering commitment must be immense. You're managing two different sets of rules that probably conflict with each other.
They often do. I mean, walk us through that. What are the builders dealing with here?
Well, you've got these differential environments, right? The water section needs everything. An aquascape needs submerged heater, filtration, water chemistry checks.
Just like an aquascape.
But then the land area, which might only be a third of the tank, it needs incredible drainage. People use false bottoms or vertical substrate layers to keep the roots from getting waterlogged.
So they're trying to keep the land from getting too wet.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, that land section has to stay super humid, often with misting systems, to support the amphibious life.
Wow. So you have to stop the water from flooding the land, but you also have to keep the air above the land from drying everything out.
It's a constant balancing act, thermodynamics and hydrology in a glass box.
And the inhabitants have to reflect that, right? The source mentioned crabs.
Crabs, amphibians like frogs and newts, certain small fish. It's the home for anything that relies on both environments.
So it really is the comprehensive option. It's mimicking a whole riverbank.
It's the synthesis. The best of the terrarium and the aquascape connected by that critical engineered shoreline. And yeah, it's exponentially harder to maintain.
So we've done it. We have clear definitions for all three.
We've got the knowledge base, terrarium.land, no standing water, aquascape, all water, paludarium, land, water, and that crucial shoreline. But now we get to the part of the source that I found truly surprising. It gives us a much deeper insight. We know what these things are, but we have to ask, so what? What did this mean for the person who researched it?
Yeah.
Because the author basically says, okay, figured it out, I don't care.
It's the most valuable insight in the whole post, I think.
Yeah.
It says so much about focused learning. The author explicitly states that even after defining these three complex systems, they weren't drawn to the artistic side of it.
Not the look of terrariums, not the elaborate planting of aquascapes.
None of it. And most importantly, they concluded they would not be exploring paludariums any further.
They filled the knowledge gap and then made a clean pivot right back to what they were already doing.
Which tells you what their real priority was. This wasn't some casual search for a new hobby.
Right.
The author's long-term interests, the things that motivated all this research in the first place, are plant propagation and fish breeding.
So they didn't need to build a beautiful glass box for their living room. They needed to understand the exact environment that supports life for those specific goals.
Yes. It's knowledge for function, not knowledge for display.
That is such a key distinction.
Absolutely. They weren't asking, what cool centerpiece can I build? They were asking, what is the correct name for this thing I saw? So they could file that knowledge away correctly and get on with their real work.
And when you look at the metadata of the blog, it just reinforces that focus completely. We're looking at notes on gardening, part 761.
Think about that number, 761.
And the source also mentions, 166 entries on fish keeping?
This isn't just a hobbyist reading a magazine. This is a scholar applying the same rigor to biology that they do to Haskell or Python programming.
You can't get to part 761 if your foundational knowledge is shaky. You can't be making basic classification errors.
You really can't.
Yeah.
It just reinforces that for highly dedicated people, getting the definitions right is crucial. The value of defining a paludarium wasn't about interior decorating.
Right.
It was about clearing up that initial confusion so that every single future entry on breeding or propagation would be categorized with absolute accuracy. The goal was just intellectual clarity.
That's a powerful realization. You know, sometimes the reward of a deep dive isn't a new project. It's just closing a loop of confusion, getting the right definition, and then going back to what you're already passionate about, but with more rigor.
It really is. It shows how even one tiny piece of knowledge, like the definition of a shoreline, has immense value when it's integrated into a bigger, well-documented system of thought.
So let's quickly recap those three definitions for you, the listener, before we wrap this up. We established that a terrarium is land-based, dry, or humid, but with no standing water. It's for terrestrial plants.
Then you have the aquascape, which is the fully aquatic tank, all water for submerged plants and fish.
And finally, the paludarium. That's the complex hybrid with both land and water, and it's defined by that critical engineered shoreline between them.
And our source gave us this fantastic final thought on what it takes, the sheer dedication for sustained learning. We saw the author's meticulous journals, Guarding Part 761, Fish Keeping Part 166. It really raises a question, doesn't it?
What stands out to you about that level of commitment?
Just think about the dedication to maintain detailed chronological notes on one subject for hundreds and hundreds of entries over years.
We just took one tiny piece of that archive today, a single tangent.
Exactly. But the bigger lesson is in the system itself.
How can that level of sustained focus, of documentation and intellectual rigor be applied to your own interests? What foundational definitions are you clarifying for yourself right now? What are you documenting? And how deep are you willing to go in the pursuit of clear, functional knowledge?